Hmm. Hmm. Back like we never left. Yo, I'm tired as a mug. I've been up since 4 a.m., but no excuses. Just got off work. Just got home not too long ago. But again, no excuses. I'm serious about this. I'm gonna start off with a Bible verse. It's from the book of James. It's chapter 2, verse 17, and it says, "Even so, faith, if it hath not works, is dead being alone." So you can believe in something, but if you don't put in the work, then is no result. How's that old saying go? Actions speak louder than words. You know, um, I want to start this off by just giving a shout out, love, and respect. First and foremost, to my brothers who I met up with yesterday. Uh, my guy Mo Sosa. My brother Claude Zilla, the monster. Um, Also, shout out to my coworkers today. I had a lot of great talks with a few of them. Thanks for the love. Thanks for the support. The two most important things in this life: health, and that's what I'm gonna touch on later on too. About fitness and stuff like that. Not that I'm some guru, but I try to do my part. But health and time, because if you don't have your health, then nothing else matters. And time you cannot get back. I don't care how much money you got, you can't buy it. With that said, I just want to touch on a few things. Um, I start off thinking about like just various conversations that I had with different people, different coworkers and friends of mine and stuff like that. I just speak personally, like as men, it's like you got to ask yourself. This coming from a relationship standpoint, like what do you look for? What qualities do you look for in a woman? In your significant other. What qualities attract you to them besides the physical, of course. I know we all have different types that we're attracted to, um, but at the same time, it's like what besides the looks. Although you can add that, chime in like what physical features you like. For the men, even for the ladies too. Um, but besides the physical standpoint, what other things you? I know me. Um, Intelligence is important. Intelligence is very important. Um, I'm trying to think what else. Goodness, what's the word? Etiquette. Etiquette. That's the word I'm looking for. Like how you carry yourself um, as a woman. That's very important to me. God fearing. The reason why I bring up God fearing is because um, if you have a fear of God and a sense of awareness, then there's an order to this. As far as relationships, marriage, you don't you're not met with resistance. I noticed that in this era it's such a divide between men and women because of some of the things that this country as far as has indoctrinated us as far as with the women first and foremost. Oh my goodness. But the men too. Like we live in a passive, like just fugazi era, man. Like I said, they don't want us as men to be leaders. They want us to be a bunch of followers, man. These dudes so busy, they letting their girls walk in front of them because they want to look at their assets. Instead of taking the lead because you there to protect them and there to lead them. But again, when I always talk about the order to this, like the direct order is God first. God, man, woman, children. It says that in the scriptures where it says, hey, people always talk about, well, yeah, the man is the head. That's true, y'all. But Christ is the head of the man. If you don't have, if you're not in touch with your relationship with God and you're not in tune with the scriptures and how you're supposed to do these things, you're going to lead a lot of these women astray, which is why a lot of them, like I said, they have lost respect for us. And, they don't feel a need to follow us because our heads are cloudy. Our heads aren't screwed on straight. Um, but, like I said, I want to touch on just various things, but I wanted to start off with that. Much props to the folks out there that are married, because again, it's like they in this era, unfortunately, it's like they shun marriage, like there's something wrong with that, and it's not. What's important is who you're married to. The one that you want to build with, and that goes for men and women. As men, we have to recognize the qualities that you know a good woman can bring to you into your life, because they're the help me. We're not meant to go through this alone. They're there to basically the things, like I said, their outlook and their vision is completely different from ours as men. Like I said, we both can look at the same thing and see two totally different things. And with that said, women have to recognize the qualities of the man as far as, integrity, God fearing, of course, physical standpoints too. It's a certain presence that, we have to have as men. It's like, it's hard for me to really put it into words, but only thing I can say is like, you're either born with it or you're not, unfortunately. Because, yeah, some of these dudes out here, they lacking, especially in this era, man. Now these Bama's out here is soft as skinless grapes. You know what I mean? But again, I'm not going to, air my brothers too much. I'm just saying it starts and ends with us. I know these, like I said, I know these women are rebellious. Not all of them, but unfortunately, a lot of them. But you got to know how to weed out the differences. Like I said, I'm touching on a few things until I get my group together. And hopefully that will happen soon, because I met up with my brothers yesterday. We trying to get some things popping off. But again, like, somebody got to lead off this. And again, why not me? I'm very passionate about this, because it's like they're literally trying to silence people subliminally. Every one of us has a voice. Every one of us has something to offer, to this world. And as men, we're supposed to bring order to this. But a lot of dudes is keeping their mouth shut. They sitting there accepting whatever. When y'all know right from wrong, and y'all know there's some stuff out here that's like, some stuff is straight funny style. And I'm waiting for somebody, to step up. But again, and it's not to brag. It really isn't. If you knew my background and the things that I've been through, like, my mother always told me I was a natural born leader. And I believe all men have that potential to be that. So I'm not going to size myself up like I'm ish, but I know what I'm capable of. And like I said, I have a young son to raise into this environment, which is very polluted. Very polluted. And like I said, no one's speaking up. I'm like, you know what? Let me do my part. I think I was sharing it with a couple of my coworkers today, and I was like, for what I do, I can't really say what I really want to say. It's like we got to kind of edit ourselves, muffle ourselves. We can't really go all in. This is like a format to where I can. But I still got to be strategic because of what I do. So certain things I can't fully divulge in because I know they monitor everything. But again, another one of my favorite scriptures. Let me see if I find so I can quote it accurately. I believe it's in. I know it's in the book of Timothy. I don't know if it's Timothy chapter. I don't know if it's Timothy. I'm sorry. I don't know if it's First Timothy or Second Timothy. If I can find it, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to hold things up, y'all. Just bear with me. Geez, I'm in First Timothy right now. Is it this? Let me see. Second Timothy. Yeah, here you go. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. This is another one of my favorite verses. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. That's why anytime I get anxious or anything, I don't fear, not that I'm Superman or anything, but any level of anxiety or any type of nervousness, usually I start laughing because I know where that's coming from. That's not coming from above. That's coming from below. That's not coming from God Almighty. And I bring that up because, some people get hesitant about some of the things that they want to do. How these people want to see me, how they're going to view me. Like I said, at the end of the day, I want to know that I laid it all out on the line, Mamba mentality to a certain extent, to where, you basically did everything in your power to reach the masses. Excuse me, my throat is dry. I've been up since 4 a.m. But it's, like I said, it's a lot of things I want to touch on, like even little minor things like the Diddy trial. And I'm not going to single them out. I think, real talk, I think the reason why they're bringing that up is because they want people to forget about the Epstein list. And these are the things where I say, even though I'm conservative by nature, and like I said, I lean towards the red side, even though I said they're two wings of the same demonic bird. But at the same time, it's like I see discrepancies on both ends, and I'm not going to hesitate to call that out. That's one of the discrepancies I see on the red side. There's plenty I see on the blue, plenty. Like I said, my people, have to get off of that, what they call it, that Democratic plantation. It doesn't mean that, you got to vote Republican or you're going to be MAGA and all this other nonsense. Nah, look, it means that you have an independent way of thinking. You're not subscribing to nothing. It's the reason why anytime the politicians come out, they pander to other groups, but they don't give us anything because they know, we got them in our back pocket. They gonna vote for us regardless. And to me, that's a lack of respect. That's a lack of respect for us as a people. And it's like, I pray that more people wake up and see the truth in what's going on with this. Like I said, at the end of the day, you can't go, I like this person. I think I want to invite him to the cookout, or, I gotta have a drink with this person. Policies. Things that represent your belief system. These are the things that you should vote on. I'm not telling you which way to go. I'll share another personal story with you, man. Like I used to, and like I said, again, I was raised in the church. And recently, I used to attend, my church was like via Zoom because it was like far away. Like I'm in one end of town, my church is in the other end of town. So I used to do Zoom, my mother attended, I think she still does. But I noticed that the pastor of the church, especially during the last election, he was speaking a lot of negativity towards, and I brought it to his attention once, respectfully. And I say respectfully because he was my elder. Like, this is an older dude. And I remember in the book of Peter, they talk about, when you speak to an elder, most of the time you kind of like silent and you listen, but at the same time, when you have a discrepancy, you definitely speak up, because I'm not a little kid no more. I'm a grown man. We men in this. And I noticed that, the pastor was speaking a lot of negative venom towards the conservative side, towards the red side. And he was speaking a lot of positive towards the blue side, the liberal side. And I'm sitting there in my mind, I'm like, hold up, young. Like, you're in a position of authority, you're in a position of leadership. You're basically using your position to influence the way people vote, when that's something that's personal. And I mentioned that to my mother. I said, something like that, if you're on the pulpit and you're preaching, either you talk about the discrepancies on both sides, or you leave it alone. You don't touch the subject, and you just tell the congregation, look, this is a personal decision. It's something that you pray about, before you make that decision. But what you don't do is you don't use your position of leadership and authority as influence to steer people one way or the other. Because then at that point, it's like, okay, who are you working for? Because at that point, you're not working for God. You're working for this party or that party. And I'm speaking on both sides. I can call out discrepancies on both sides. Like I'm a true independent with this. I can bring up my voting history later on, but like I said, I'm not going to speak on that too much. But it's just something that I wanted to touch on, and I wanted to bring up because I noticed a pattern with that. And the fact that anytime that my people in particular, they try to think outside of the box, they become demonized. They call them sellouts, coons, Uncle Toms, or whatever. But you have to be a free thinker. You have to have an independent way of thinking without being only influence should come from above, especially as men. That's why I talk about the order to this. Like as men, when I said that, the head of the man is Christ, the head of the woman is the man, and then the children fall in line. That's where your influence should come from. On a lighter note, like I got the little joint. I'm still debating if I'm like, hey, man, look, you want me to give you the weather report? The weather report is as hot as fish grease out that mug. You can fry eggs on a freaking concrete. So I might do a little bit of exercise in the house. I don't know. Usually I go for a run or take a walk. We'll see. But you as men, especially in particular, it's like you kind of got to look at this life like you training for a fight. You know what I mean? Like a boxer. You remember like when they train? I don't know if y'all seen Rocky. When Mick was talking to him, and he was like, "Women weaken legs." You know what I mean? Like it's like you got to value yourself. Without being crass and all that. I tell my young son, when I talk about his body and stuff like that, his men and differences, I said, "Yo, you have an energy gun. You know what I mean? That's your energy. That's your essence. You can build it up or you can deplete it. Like I said, these are things like they don't talk about to us as men. They tell women, oh, you value your bodies. Value this. Man's supposed to appreciate. And there's nothing wrong with that. But as men, it's like we value other things. Little body count or what the chick look like or what you got in your bank account. And like I said, you can't take none of that with you. Money is a tool. That's it. What are you using it for? Are you using it to help others? Using it to exalt yourself to, big up, say you're better than someone? Because, again, I go back to the scriptures. For the love of money is the root of all evil. Some people quote that scripture wrong. Sometimes they'll say, money is the root of all evil. No, money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. So, like I said, use it as a tool, use it wisely. Pardon me. Had a long day. It's summertime, so I was like, I said, should I talk about sports or anything like that? Like I said, I guess I can stick with the boxing thing. You know what I mean? Like y'all can share with me, like, who your top 5 favorite boxers, who your favorite fighters? You know what I mean? Me personally, I don't know. It's like off the top of the dome, man. Dang, I didn't really give it much thought, but I know I just mentioned my favorites, like Roy Jones in his prime. Like as far as my lifetime, like entertaining, the eye test, reflexes, top notch. He shouldn't have jumped them weight classes. When he went up to heavyweight and then he jumped back down, it depleted something from him. He should have stayed middleweight, maybe cruiserweight at the max. Sugar Ray, Leonard. Let me think who else. Respect to Mayweather. People forget because they get caught up in money made. They forget when he was Pretty Boy Floyd and he was knocking Bammers out. His hands got a little fragile. You know what I mean? So he learned to become a defensive fighter. He's probably the best defensive fighter / counterpuncher ever. Of course, Muhammad Ali, like he's the one guy that I've always said, like when you just want to do athletes, as far as they talk about this, and I'm gonna touch on that term GOAT later on. But when we talk about athletes and the greatest of all time, we talk about all sports. Like he's the one dude I put over Michael Jordan. He's the one dude I put over Michael Jordan. Like I got Ali like number one. He transcended his sport before social media. They knew who he was worldwide before social media. People didn't speak English. They knew who Muhammad Ali was. He wasn't just a fighter in the ring. He was a fighter outside the ring. Not that he was perfect. He wasn't. None of us are. But he literally stood for something. And he was the epitome of what they say the people's champ. Like he was the people's champ. And then if you look at his level of competition, like he fought other Hall of Famers in his era. Like he was battling dudes who had prestige in their own right. And you can't say that about a lot of boxers. You know what I mean? Prime Mike Tyson. Oh my goodness. Prime Mike. Like that's that other Mike. Like folks have no idea, man. They think about the ear bite, the 90s, the tattoo on the face. They don't know what that dude was like, man. You know, when he had the little fade in the 80s, Kid Dynamite. That was just striking fear in people. You know, trying to think who else. I gotta put Holyfield up there too. Folks be sleeping on Evander. Evander fought all the top tier dudes from his era. He's the only guy that you can say that because even Tyson did. Holyfield fought Tyson, fought Rick Bowe, Lennox Lewis. You know what I mean? He took on all comers, you know, and held his own and you know, did his thing against all of them. George Foreman as well. But like I said, I'm not going to digress too much. I'm going to get back on a serious note. Like as far as, you know, the things that's going on in this world, like I said, when they talk about with the Diddy trial and things going on, I think this whole thing is a distraction. I do. From the Epstein list. I'm not even going to touch on if this is a racial thing or what. I do find it a kind of a coincidence that anytime, if all else fails, let's take a black man down. Not justifying his behavior or nothing. But I'm seeing a pattern here. I'm seeing a pattern. I'm just going to call it like I see it. And I'm not a fan of his. Like back in the day, my guy, I told you, I was pop. I was rolling with Death Row. I was one of the people on the East Coast that was going with the West Side. I caught some static for that too. With a girl I was dealing with way back when in her family because her brother actually knew Biggie personally. You know, so matter of fact, Big gave him a shout out on Ready to Die. Her brother's nickname was Man. You'll probably see it if you look in the inside booklet of Ready to Die. You give him a shout out. So I'm not gonna go into too much details, but I bring that up because of the whole Diddy thing, and it seemed like, oh, is he taking up on him? No. I see a pattern. I see a coincidence with this stuff. You know, and as far as the details of it, I tell you, listen to them phone calls that Cassie was doing when she was literally threatening people to kill him. You know, I mean, that was her saying that. Like, he had nothing doing that. And like I said, I'm not justifying anything that he did. You know, God is the ultimate judge on that. But like I said, I noticed a pattern and a coincidence with as far as like anytime there's some controversy or something going on, they want to cause a distraction. Always put you got a black man up there, you want to take the downfall. You know, whether you talk about Cosby, you talk about Puff, you can go back to the 90s with Tyson, Tupac, you know, with them cases, Kobe. You know, like I said, it's like a historical pattern with this stuff. You know, because it's a certain, me personally, I believe it seems like it's a certain image that they want to portray for whatever reason. I'll save all those discussions for later. I'm just touching on things early. Um, again, I just want to give respect, to my coworkers, who support me. Much love to y'all. Respect to my brothers who I met with yesterday. We gonna get something popping off soon. But I'm relentless with this. I'm gonna keep doing this regardless. I'm not trying to do this for profit or none of that stuff. Like God willing, if it happens, it happens. But at the end of the day, if what I'm saying sparks the brain of one person, motivates one person, I've done my part. Just remember, as men, starts and it ends with us. As far as the women, they are not exempt. They're adults too. I swear it seems like they going through life on easy mode, but the ladies have their own personal battles, that they have to deal with as well. As men, we have to be aware of these things. At the same time, the women, they need to appreciate what we bring to the table as well. Because, like I said, it's a major divide right now, from for the men and women. As far as a lot of women think men, predators, useless, uh, you know, and a lot of dudes they look at women as basically like objects. They have nothing to bring but what you physically see in front of them, not anything from an intellectual standpoint or a spiritual standpoint. And you need that. But it's just funny, I'm sitting there because I check out different YouTube pages and stuff like that, and I be saying like a lot of chicks, they their own pages, they be talking about this divine feminine and worship. I'm like, no, you trying to put yourself up above all this other stuff? Like, it's a balance to this. The feminine needs the masculine, and vice versa. I've said it many times. Some of these women, they act like they're upset with men, but really they're upset with God. They just don't want to say it. Because we didn't create this. We didn't set this up. We created the infrastructure of the planet, but we didn't create the planet itself or the order to this. Or the desires and energy. It's all been set up by design. But some of them don't want to admit that. Me, like I said, I'm just trying to do my part to bring the balance back to all this. I appreciate, my peoples for supporting me. I'm not done. Like I said, this is only the beginning. I'm freestyling off the dolo. Like I said, I know my page not comparing to a lot of YouTube pages, but give it time. Give it time. It's like the equivalent, like I said before. It's like you go back to Kobe when he shot them air balls in Utah in '97. But you got to look at the fact that he had the fortitude to take them shots. He had the gusto to take them shots. And you seen what he became. I'm kind of at that point, right now. But you want to find out, I'm relentless with this. Nonstop, because my heart's in the right place. And I want to see, I want people to know the truth. Because there's so many other things that I could really touch on. Like even if you go to the scriptures, where is it, man? I might as well bring it up now. It's in the book of Isaiah. And I believe it's chapter 9. I believe it's chapter 9. I could be wrong. It may be a chapter before that. Huh. Yeah, here we go. I'm sorry. It was chapter 3. Where it says, matter of fact, let me take a sip of water, man. Isaiah chapter 3, verse 12. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the way of thy paths. Like I said, this ain't my opinion. It says that right there in the word of God, Isaiah chapter 3, verse 12. Sound like my people. About children being oppressed, how these little youngins wilding out, no respect for authority. I told you a lot of got daddy issues. I'm going to touch on that later. And it says how women rule over them. Remember? Big Mama's house. Mama's rules. Mama, 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 mama. You can even look at the case. What's the guy's name? I wish I could think of his name, but the dude that excuse me, that murder case is going on. With a black kid killed the white kid. You know, forgive me, like I said, I just got off work. I gotta get better with my research, and I will. But I noticed, I seen when his parents were talking, his father didn't say one word. Dude standing there with a bow tie, just silent. Mama sitting there extra sassy, yelling and screaming. What type of energy you think that had? What type of impact you think that had on that kid? It says in the scriptures the woman's not supposed to usurp authority over the man. I believe that's in the book of Timothy as well. But then in Isaiah it talks about how, you know, women rule over them. Like, and he's not speaking that from a positive standpoint. Because God created man first. And there's an order to this. That don't mean that you can do whatever you want as a man. You can't. Matter of fact, I used to tell like some previous locations I worked at, some of the female coworkers that I work with, I used to always tell them, I said, look, if you're dealing with a guy and he's not treating you right, all you got to do as a woman is stand back and wait. As men, we never get away, ever. God gets us first, and he gets us more severe than anybody else. He hits us harder than women and children. That's why a lot of times, most of the time, men die first. Not just that, the punishment, like I said, is way severe because it's more responsibility that we're supposed to have. But these are things that they don't teach us. Like I said, they don't teach us to value ourselves, to value our bodies, to know our purpose. They want us to sit here and be passive. They don't want us to have a voice. They want the women to be loud and aggressive, and me in the front. You know, I noticed that from a political standpoint. It seems like one side is hell bent on having female leadership. It's got to be the best person for the job, not fitting some type of imagery. But I mean, my people in particular, you know, y'all used to being led by mama, bunch of mama's boys, y'all. Used to being, you know, used to having a woman walk in front because, like I said, you too busy admiring her assets to focus on actually leading them. You got to have some type of discipline. Like I said, that doesn't mean, oh, you need to control this and control that. You do to a certain extent. But, you know, at the same time, like I said, that don't mean the women are exempt. They ain't. Oh, they not. Trust me. These are things I done prayed to God about. Because like I said, it seems like a lot of them can do whatever the heck they want and get little slaps on the wrist. From a spiritual standpoint. When men, we can't do that. One of the quotes from my favorite movies, The Godfather, when he said, when it was from the beginning, and he was like, women and children can be reckless, but men can't. Man, there's some truth to that. We really can't. Consequences are way too severe. So like I said, I'm just trying to do my part, you know, motivate, you know, inspire, hopefully, you know, and, you know, just lay it on the line, you know, it's just use it as an outlet. You know, like I said, we all have a voice to this. You know, like I said, I'm going to start from a spiritual. The reason why I even told my son is like the reason why not that I'm some saint. I'm not. I don't judge nobody, but I'm not making it up. I have read the Bible front to back with a level of understanding too. Because my parents used to force me to read when I was younger, but I did it the rush so I can go back to doing what I was doing. But I went through a tough point in my life, and this was back in 2017. And I remember looking at, I'm sitting there, just sitting at my kitchen table and just looking at the Bible. And I said, you know what? I'm going to read this from front to back. And I want to see if this is real or not. Not going through the motions and stuff. I want to see if God's real or not. That's why I truly believe, because Christ has revealed certain things to me to show me. People have to have a level of understanding as to how God works. You know, it's kind of like what I was sharing with my brothers yesterday, where they talk about that in the scriptures, where they say, you know, when you start off, they call you babes in Christ or babies in Christ, meaning that you can't give a baby a T-bone steak and a baked potato. You got to give them formula or breast milk, you know, something like that. They can't digest the heavy stuff. Same thing as an adult. You're not going to give an adult just a freaking cup of milk. They're going to want a meal. You got to look at it from the same point, from a spiritual standpoint, to where you want to get to that point where you're digesting T-bone spiritual states. Your level of understanding is much greater. You know. Again, thank you for your time. This is only the beginning.